What is going on, everybody? So today we're going to continue our shop owner series. We're going to chat a little bit about a couple things about doing estimates over the phone and customer supplied parts. Before I get into this, I understand sometimes these conversations can be a little controversial. Let's keep it respectful in the comments, please. I'm curious to know what your all's operations are, what you do in your shops. How do you attack this? Do you do estimates over the phone? Do you supply, or will you install customer supplied parts? Sorry, tongue twisted there. So I'm curious about that. I am interested to know. I'm going to go into my process and what I do, what I have learned in my experiences, and let you know why I don't do certain things and the way I do them. Again, just because I do it this way doesn't mean it's the only way. It's just the way I do it in my experiences and what I've learned. I've seen the opposite effect, and I've experienced the opposite effect in some situations, and it never turned out good. So to me, we have to be different. We also have to help raise the industry up and change some things, because one, we need more help, and we need people to view us differently as professionals, which rightfully so. That's what we are as professionals. So let's get into the first topic. The first one is estimates over the phone. So price shoppers essentially is what they are. Now, not everybody cares about the cheapest price. There are those out there that are looking for just the cheapest price. If they are, I just let them know I'm not the shop for them, because I'm not going to be the cheapest guy around, nor do I want to be. And so I will have that conversation and then recommend them to someone else that is cheaper. And I do have some shops that are cheaper that I recommend people to, and I just let them know, hey, their warranty's not the same. They're not doing the same level of service. They're not giving you everything that I'm giving you. That's okay. If you're just looking for price, that's fine. Here you go, and I'll give them that information and send them over there. But the way I explain to the people that are not just looking for price, sometimes people just are unsure of what they've been told. So it's good to have a conversation with them. And I'll let you know, sometimes I spend 10 to 15 minutes with these people on the phone. And I know not everybody wants to do that, but I can tell you I've converted a lot of them into customers. They've had great experiences, and they've referred a lot of people to me afterwards as well. So it's created a lot of revenue for me sitting down and actually taking the time. And I'm just a one-man show right now. And so for me, it's even harder to take that much extra time, because obviously if I'm not in the bay wrenching and fixing cars, then I'm not generating revenue. So it is a little bit harder, but it's been beneficial for me. So the way I explain to them on the phone, if they're calling, asking for price quote over the phone or an estimate on a job, I'll explain to them basically about doctors is how I'll compare it to doctors. Doctors don't give an estimate, a diagnosis without first looking at you. They got to look at you first. Their nurse practitioner comes in, which would be our mechanics, technicians, that'd be me in this case too. They look over the person, they get a history report, they check them over, they check blood pressures, all of that stuff, and then the doctor comes in, takes all that information, looks them over, and gives them a diagnosis. Same way with us. We can't give an accurate estimate of repairs unless we've actually seen the vehicles. How many times have you all given an estimate over the phone? That person brings in the car, you go to do the job, you tear it apart, and something else needs replaced. Something else is broken, something happens. You got to call them over the phone, say, hey, I'm really sorry I gave you this estimate, and here's, it needs this. Unfortunately, if they've never worked with you before, that already puts a thought in the back of their head about trust. There's already this stigma about our industry. And I don't know about you all, but in my experience, there's very few shops actually out there trying to rip people off. They're out there, don't get me wrong, but there's very few. In a lot of cases, it's mostly ignorance. It's not people maliciously and purposefully trying to steal people's money or sell them things they don't need and whatnot. Again, I know they're out there, but in my experience and from all the amazing shops that I know, it's not as common as some people make it seem. It's more ignorance and stuff like this, where people get the wrong idea and there's a communication issue or whatnot. And so again, they have that thought in the back of their mind, like, oh man, well, they quoted me this over the phone and now they're saying this, or they're just trying to sell me something and whatnot. So when I talk to them over the phone, I'm like, hey, listen, I understand you want a price estimate over the phone. Here's the deal. And I explain the doctor comparison to them, and I say, I really need to see the vehicle first. I don't want to quote you brakes over the phone. Then you come in, you end up needing boot kit or hardware or whatever, not hardware kit because it comes with the brakes, but boot kit, or you have a seized slide pin that we have to heat up and clean out and do some extra repairs to, or put some extra labor time on there, or you have a seized caliper or a bad brake hose, or who knows, whatever it may be. In any job, it doesn't really matter. I've not seen the vehicle yet, so if I gave you a price estimate over the phone, I would be lying to you, because again, I don't want to give you that estimate, then call you on the phone after I get it and say, hey, unfortunately that estimate was wrong. It's actually going to be this price. So, and I let them know. These are the things I let them know up front every single time. You're never obligated to do the repair. So if I inspect it and you don't want to do the repair, you don't like the price or whatever it may be, you just don't feel comfortable, you're not obligated. I will not spend your money without your permission. I won't do any sort of work without your authorization. You have my word on that. And so that actually has worked out really well for me. And again, like I said, I've converted quite a few people as clients, giving them the full experience, but also we do a full digital vehicle inspection with help, which helps. So we take pictures, we write everything down, they get video if we do a video of something, and I'll call them over the phone, walk through everything. So we try to create it as a whole customer experience. I say we, it's me and my wife. So it's a whole thing. And so I want them to be treated differently than they've ever been treated before. That's my goal. And then obviously do a good job on the vehicle, be transparent, which again is why I tell them up front, like, I need to see the vehicle. You're not obligated. Next is customer supplied parts. So I used to do this early on in my business, and I hated doing it anyways, because how many times have we all got customer supplied parts? You tear the vehicle apart and it's the wrong parts, or the part's defective, or who knows what. Ends up being a nightmare. Your bay's tied up. You think you're making extra money because you charged extra on labor or whatever, and you're not. You end up losing money because they've supplied the parts. Or they've supplied cheap parts and they fail a couple months later, and then they're mad. They're mad at you for some reason, even though they supplied the parts. It's a whole thing. So when people call and tell me they have their own part, I explain it into a 3-step process, and this is why we all like to supply our own parts and should supply our own parts. I no longer do customer supply parts at all, 0%. It is a non-negotiable for me. Back step on estimates over the phone. I will give pricing over the phone on oil changes and like maintenance stuff. That's a little different, and that's going to be, each person's going to be different on that. But like oil changes and things like that, maybe a transmission fluid service, stuff like that, that's going to be a little different, because you know those are usually preset prices or canned prices. But again, that's just a couple little things. 98% of the stuff, especially repairs, I'm not quoting over the phone. All right, back to customer supply parts. So three things. I tell them, number one, first and foremost, it's the liability reason. My insurance doesn't cover me and cover them if something happens to that part. So let's say I install their ball joint. That ball joint fails, they get into an accident, someone gets hurt. I'm not usually worried about that person, even though people are sue happy that day. I'm more worried about their insurance company. They're going to try to find somebody to blame. How many headlines and stories have you seen where car catches on fire and was just at the shop, or whatever, customer tire blows and they were just at automotive repair shop? There's always, they're always trying to spin it in a negative light. So liability is my number one reason. My insurance doesn't cover me. I also have nothing to fall back to on that part because I didn't buy it from a parts supplier. So that makes a difference as well. Number two, we make money on the parts. A lot of shops are scared to tell people this. I think a lot of people understand this and know this already, so I don't understand why they're scared to tell people. But I just tell them, hey, listen, I make money on that part. I've got bills to pay. It's how I operate my business. It's how I pay for my overhead. It's either I charge you $300 an hour on labor and make no money on parts, or I charge you, $150 to $200 an hour and make my parts margins, or whatever. I'm just using numbers as examples. Whatever your labor rate is and your parts margins are. So I just explained to them, we've got bills to pay. I've got taxes and equipment and normal business stuff, payroll taxes, all that stuff. It adds up, and then you got to make profit, and then you got to pay yourself, and that profit pays for equipment when it breaks, expansion, whatever you need to do in your shop. And then third is warranty. My warranty doesn't cover their supplied parts. So I always explain to them, like, another more important idea is not only is it we make money, but you lose your warranty, so you're not saving any money. Let's say that parts fails. My warranty's 3 or 36,000 miles here. So they don't get that 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty. And I'm like, that to me is silly because you lose money in the long run. If that part fails within any time in 3 years or 36,000 miles, and it's a part failure or something I did, it's covered, no questions asked. And they don't have to pay a dime. If I install their parts, they don't get that warranty. If it's within that 3-year, 36,000 mile, they got to pay twice, and they save no money. They actually cost themselves money. And to be honest, let's be real honest, 98% of the time when they're buying their own parts, they're buying the cheapest absolute parts they can get their hands on. 98% of the time. There's a small percentage that are buying the nice quality parts, but it's pretty rare. Usually if they're trying to supply their own parts, it's because they want to buy the cheapest part and save the money on the markup and all that stuff. And it's just not worth it. It ends up being a nightmare. So that's the way I do things. Let me know what you all do. Hopefully that was a good description. There's always like more stuff you can explain, but I don't want to make these videos like, 20, 30 minutes long for y'all. Y'all have lives. But let me know in the comments, how do you operate things? What are your procedures, SOPs? What is all that? What are those things that you do at your shop? Do you install customer supplied parts? Will you give quotes over the phone? All that jazz. I'm curious. I want to know. And let's get the conversation started. Like I said, keep it respectful. A lot of times this stuff can get controversial. Just let's have conversations. It's really not that hard. Let's be adults. See you guys. Appreciate you watching. Take it easy.